we will go ahead and get started now. We're at the top of the hour. We're very pleased to have you all here. If you are listening to this session, that means hopefully you're interested in the Fulbright Scholar-in-Residence program, which allows you as U.S. institutions to craft an application to bring a visiting scholar of your choice to your campus to primarily teach either undergraduate, graduate for either semester or full academic year. My name is Sarah Causer. I'm the Outreach and Recruitment Specialist on this program. This is one of my favorite programs to work on with Fulbright, and I will be your point of contact from the minute you're interested until you actually hit that submit button on the deadline day. I'm joined by my colleague, Susan Mundell, who will introduce herself.
Hello, everyone. Susan Mundell. I'm the Assistant Director for Multi-Regional Fulbright Student and Scholar Programs. I'm happy to be here and happy that all of you are expressing interest in the Scholar-in-Residence program.
Perfect. Thanks, Susan. And then we're also joined by my colleague, Natalie Rayberger, who is graciously helping us in the Q&A features and will be flagging your questions for later and hopefully answering them throughout the duration of the session. Natalie, do you want to quickly say hello?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Natalie Rayberger, and I'm a program officer.
Perfect. And with that, I'm going to quickly navigate over to the website. Hopefully you can all see it. I'll zoom in a bit more, but what we just wanted to quickly show you are some features on our homepage. So the website URL is cis.org/SIR, and I will put that in the chat to everyone. Hopefully you do get that. And on this, it gives you a brief overview of the program, which I just explained a moment ago. You know, we're looking for U.S. institutions to craft applications. For those of you who are visiting scholars on this call, trying to come to the U.S., we welcome you here. However, you will not be leading this application. You do need to find an eligible institution in the U.S. to apply on your behalf. Other resources I want to highlight are we do have these SIR guidelines. If you click it, it takes you to a 12-page document that has a lovely table of contents that will really walk you through the entire application process, which Susan will be showing you momentarily in the live application. We also have tips for a successful SIR application. I also encourage you to register for our monthly office hours. As we get closer to the deadline, this will likely take place twice a month, and then maybe in the last 2 weeks, it might have a few office hours each week. So we want to be available and ready to answer any questions or obstacles you encounter, but hopefully you don't. For all of our webinars, we do archive them. They're recorded and you can listen to them at any time. We're currently doing our last webinar of the season, so we're happy for you all to be here. In terms of other tips and tricks, to access the application, you go to the application tab, click on this lovely blue button, and that will take you into our application form. There's one other document that may be of interest to you all. It's information for named and recruited SIR candidates. This talks about some of the funding mechanisms and other items you might be interested in. So I highly encourage you to look there, as well as at our FAQs for some common questions you may encounter. The last topic I'm going to show you is our review criteria. We get this question every year about how each of these applications are reviewed, and this really is how they are reviewed. So I highly encourage you to take a look at this criteria for the different topics that we are looking at when we are making those decisions. But without further ado, we're going to go into the application now, and I will pass the reins over to Susan.
Great, thanks, Sarah. So you'll first notice there are a series of preliminary questions within the application. And I think Sarah skipped over a step since she's already created the application. But in order to create a new application, you enter your email address and then create a password. And then you'll be able to start an application. Great. And also, I think what's useful on that page is to know you do not have to start and complete the application all in one sitting. You can start working on it, save it, and come back to it at any time up until the 15th of October. On the preliminary questions page, we're asking essentially that you are in fact an individual applying on behalf of a U.S. institution and therefore eligible to apply. If you click on no, and Sarah, if you could just show us the no, if you're an individual, let's say if you're a visiting scholar, this is not the appropriate application for you. But we do have some instructions for you guiding you to our website in order to contact your local Fulbright Commission or U.S. Embassy in your home country. So clicking yes opens up the other pieces for the application. And here we're asking you as the individual who's completing it to enter your information, your name and email address here. Then on the next page, we've got the institutional information. So here we're asking that you include all relevant institutional information. If you are applying for a joint proposal with another U.S. institution, then you would click yes, and then in which case it will provide a prompt for both institutions to complete the information for each. If it's no, if you're a single application, then it's just tailored to your own institution. There's a section within here to provide brief information about your institution. There are 3 prompt boxes: the size and characteristics of the student body and faculty, the mission of your institution, and the scope of academic offerings. If your institution has previously received a Scholar-in-Residence program award, please click on yes there, and then list the award year, the discipline, the scholar's country of citizenship. And if the previous award was received within the past 5 years, then we ask that you provide justification for why you might need an additional grant and why you're applying for one. Okay, and then moving on the next page, we have institutional contact information. So here you'll include the name and contact information for the responsible administrative official who will confirm the institutional support and authorize the scholar's affiliation if the SIR grant is awarded. A signed letter of support from the responsible administrative official is to be uploaded on the institutional support page, which we'll get to a little bit later on. If you are submitting a joint proposal, complete the corresponding sections for both institutions. Also include the name and contact information for the principal contact for academic arrangements, the faculty member who will work most closely with the scholar in an academic setting. Then we also ask that you include the name and contact information for the principal contact for non-academic arrangements, and that would be the faculty member or administrator who will work closely with the scholar on non-academic, cross-campus, and community settings. If it's different from the principal contact for academic or the responsible administrative official. We then also have a section, the oversight, which is to briefly describe the structure within the institution for planning, overseeing, and assessing the SIR grant, including the names and responsibilities of key personnel involved if they're not listed. Personnel responsibilities may include overseeing the program, holding regular meetings with the scholar and related faculty members and administrators, organizing the scholar's teaching schedule and other professional and community activities, and serving as the point person to correspond with IIE.
Susan, before we go on, there was one question on the previous tab about those institutional responses, those 3 short answers. Can you provide a little more guidance on what we are looking for in terms about the institution for those 3 sections? Should I go back?
Sure. So the size and characteristic of the student body and faculty, we're really looking for how many students do you have at your, how many undergrad, how many graduate students, how many faculty, what is the ratio between faculty and students, the composition of your student body, for example, how many international students do you have, students that are in-state, out-of-state, so those sorts of information that we're looking for, sort of the demographic of your student body and faculty. The mission is, usually this is a mission statement of the university, of the institution. You can contact, check with your, with the dean, check with the provost, but the mission of the institution should be just briefly listed there. And the scope of academic offerings is just a summary of the types of courses that are offered, whether it be the range of disciplines, the fields of study, the majors and minors that are offered. So that type of information is what would be of interest on this page.
Great, thanks so much. And then we had one question on the institutional contacts. For those institutional representatives, are we looking for someone at the level of the university president, or is an academic dean sufficient?
So it really will depend on the structure of your individual university, but it should be so in some cases that may be the dean, in some cases it may be the president or the provost. But it's, so we're not making that determination of the value or the content. We're just asking that it's clear that the leadership from your institution is supportive of bringing the SIR onto your campus.
Great, thanks so much. I will proceed to the next page for you.
Okay, great. So the next section is the program information page. So here we're looking for, first and foremost, your proposed program dates. So this needs to fall, for this cycle, this would fall in the 22 to 23 academic year. Can either be for one semester or a full academic year. The one semester grant is a minimum of 3 months, and the full academic year is a maximum of 10 months. The grants may begin no earlier than August of the U.S. academic year. So there's a fill-in here for the dates. The from would be the start of your grant, and then to would be the end, and the length in months. And whether it's under term, there's the drop down for fall semester, spring, full academic year, and other if you're on a quarter system, for example. Complete the 4 program information short essay sections on this page. The summary of activities. Here we're looking for a brief summary of activities that the scholar will be engaged in on your campus and within the community. We're looking here, this should be limited to 2 to 3 sentences, so very, very brief. The academic program of the scholar. This should address what department the scholar will be housed in, provide information regarding specific course responsibilities and guest teaching assignments. If teaching, include the number of courses and the course names, if available, the anticipated co-instructors as well. Describe how you will involve the scholar in a variety of academic roles and activities beyond teaching courses such as curriculum development, academic advising. I'm also going to note here that proposals may include a maximum of 2 courses per semester. If the scholar is expected to teach courses, then upload any course outlines, course description, sample syllabi, or other academic plans and objectives associated with the proposal. And there's an uploader field directly there. Yes. Next essay question, short essay, I should say. is the plans for other campus activities. So this should describe the scholar's anticipated involvement in the variety of campus activities beyond the department, the hosting department, and include interaction with students, faculty, and administrators. Indicate what arrangements you'll make for the scholar's participation in educational, cultural, civic, and social events and activities sponsored by clubs and alumni groups. Then the community outreach. This section should detail your specific plans to involve the scholar in programs sponsored by the community group, such as service clubs, elementary and secondary schools, visits to nearby colleges and universities, fraternal and ethnic organizations, cultural institutions, religious groups, business and professional organizations, international councils and clubs, local media, local government offices, and chambers of commerce. This is just a few examples. So essentially the difference between the short essay of the plans for other campus activities and the community outreach is we're looking for your plans for on-campus engagement and then the community outreach beyond your campus. Are there any questions on this page? I know that was a lot of information.
One question that did come in was, can multiple files be uploaded or should the max 10 pages all come in one document?
That maximum should be in one document for this page, but then we have a separate section on the institutional support page, which we'll get to later, which has a separate page limit.
Great. This next question is definitely a question after my own heart, is if an institution has other community colleges that they want to partner with through the Outreach Lecturing Fund, do they include that emphasis in their community outreach?
Partnering and working with other local community colleges is definitely a good piece to mention here in this section for your community outreach, absolutely. Planning to apply for an outreach lecturing fund could be mentioned here as part of your outreach efforts. We also have a separate section in professional development where this could also be a suitable spot for that piece. And do you want to talk a little bit about the outreach lecturing fund at this point, Sarah?
Sure, I'm happy to.
Process.
So it has an application through Slate as well. It is a much more condensed application, but traditionally the Outreach Lecturing Fund, for those of you who are not aware, allows you as institutions or other institutions the opportunity to apply to host short-term current visiting scholars here in the United States through Fulbright. So your SIR scholar that you might get to your campus could be requested from another campus to come. Their travel will be paid for to conduct short-term lectureships effectively. They could be in the classroom or the campus-wide community. I highly encourage you all to apply, get your feet wet with hosting on a short-term basis. But if you do receive a scholar, I again highly encourage you to encourage them or connect with your colleagues in other states and other institutions to really put their name out there, because this is a great networking opportunity for them. And then when you're hosting, it's again a great way for you to short-term internationalize your campus at a very easy, low-level hanging fruit. I think that should hopefully be enough for now, but the list of scholars will go live in early October. But for those of you making some fall plans, we are unsure at this time if in-person travel will commence, because right now OLF is happening in a virtual capacity. But do reach out to me in August for maybe a short list of scholars and to find out if that in-person travel will be occurring in the fall. We should know hopefully closer to late this summer what the status is at that time. I hope that was enough pitch for this session, Susan.
Great. Thank you.
I'm just double checking we don't have any other questions for what we've already gone over yet. Here's one question we probably should address is, can one institution host more than one SIR in one application?
No. So so one application that's submitted for your institution will list one scholar. You certainly can list a backup if you have more than one that that could potentially serve in this capacity. But in terms of the application and the grant, it is to fund one scholar per institution.
Great. Great. I have two other questions, but I'm going to wait till you finish this page. But the last one that I think we've addressed so far is, if an institution is co-hosting, so they're submitting a joint proposal, are they submitting one answer to these essay questions, or are there two answers to each one of those questions about the project? And is there a limit on pages for two hosts together or separately?
Oh, I see. So if you go back to the institutional information page and you select yes to, are you applying for as a joint proposal, this will show you all of the pieces that populate that are separate for each institution. So this would be the institutional information, the size and characteristics, the mission and the academic offerings, the scope for each institution that needs to be included. And then as well, the institutional contacts. So here you can see the different institutional contacts. So it'll say for institution 1 and institution 2, exactly. But then when we get to, that's great, yes. And then when we get to the program information, this is just singular. This is about the proposal itself. And I would encourage you to talk about how the scholar will work on both campuses, but it's not, but there isn't a place, it's not required to complete a separate section per institution, if I'm being clear.
That was clear to me, but if they follow up with another question, I'll let you know. And as we move to the scholar profile, I will emphasize, and Susan, correct me if I'm wrong, institutions can submit as many applications in an award cycle, but at a maximum, only one would be funded in a cycle. Is that correct, Susan?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, back to you for the scholar profile.
Okay, great. So the scholar profile page is where you provide information about the individual scholar that you plan to host. In the Scholar-in-Residence, you can either name a specific scholar or you can request recruitment if you don't have a specific scholar in mind. If you are naming a scholar, and there's this question right at the top, yes or no, if you are naming a scholar. And this will populate different fields depending on the answer. So if you select yes, it will then prompt you to include the specific name of the individual, the academic discipline, if there are any previous Fulbright grants that the individual has had within the United States, and then also to complete a short essay that addresses the following reasons for naming your specific scholar. Why this country, are the proposed scholars' academic credentials and standing appropriate for the proposed courses and other educational activities? Does the scholar have sufficient teaching and lecturing experience? Are the proposed scholars' English language skills sufficient for lecturing at the collegiate level and to allow for participation in discussions with a broad range of students and in community events? In what ways has your institution been engaged with this scholar previously? So we'd like to know how you became in contact with this individual. And then there's also It's required to include a copy of the scholar's CV and 2 letters of recommendation. One of those letters should be from the scholar's direct supervisor, and the CV must include the scholar's contact information. Now, if you are requesting recruitment, so if we go back up to the top of the page and select no, then it will then prompt you to indicate up to 2 countries within the same geographic world region where you would like the scholar to come from. And for recruitment purposes, we ask that you outline in a short essay why you've selected the world region and these particular countries, a detailed description of courses the prospective scholar will teach and other academic activities that are expected, the discipline or field of expertise, theoretical orientation, and subjects or issues about which you wish the scholar to be particularly knowledgeable. The scholar's desired qualifications, including the academic degree level and years of teaching experience. So the more information you can place in there, the better chances the committee will have of actually identifying an appropriate scholar.
Great. We have a lot of questions on this page, Susan.
Okay.
First, does this section state that priority is given to applications with named scholars?
No, there is no preference between naming a scholar or requesting recruitment.
Great. And building off of that, does naming a specific scholar enhance the chances that an institution will receive an SIR, or is recruitment just as palatable, workable for the decision makers at SIR? I believe that kind of coincides.
There's no specific advantage. Naming a scholar does not necessarily mean that your application will be more successful over another. So I'm not sure what more I can add other than there's no preference one way or the other.
Great, thank you. If the scholar that someone is proposing had a Fulbright decades ago to earn their master's in the States, does that need to be mentioned? And also, does that have an impact?
So I think it is helpful to include if the scholar has had previous experience within the United States. Generally, within the Fulbright program, we're looking to, provide opportunities to bring those to the United States that have not had an opportunity to come. But if it's long ago, it shouldn't have an impact on the application.
Thank you. Does a scholar need to be affiliated with a university?
So it depends on the nature of the specific proposal for what they're doing to ensure that they have the necessary credentials to meet specifically if they're teaching, do they have the requisite requirements to teach at your institution? They don't have to be, affiliated at the time, but we are looking for ways in which the scholar will share their experiences back with their home community. So I would say in some cases it's an advantage.
Great. And could a scholar's direct supervisor be their PhD supervisor? I think this would be in the case that they're currently assuming their PhD or undertaking it, I should say.
Yes, but I would caution that if the applicant is working towards their PhD and will not have their PhD at the time that they come, they might be more suitable candidates for the student program.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm trying to read these as fast as I can. what if they don't have a preference in which country the scholar comes from? Can an institution be flexible?
We do hope that institutions can be flexible, but the more information you can provide within the application, I think the more compelling it will be, and also guides the, certainly would guide IIE in terms of coordinating recruitment. It's more helpful to be more specific, to identify the appropriate individual who would be a good fit and a good match. So we do at least need 2 countries listed so that we can better guide our field partners.
Thanks, Susan. One question I can quickly answer is, do the letters of recommendation have to be attached with the scholar's CV? I believe that was under naming a scholar. Yes, I believe you would combine them in one file and upload them together. So hopefully that answers that question. Then we have another question of, can the university be in the process of finding its own scholar? And I think, Susan, just to add emphasis, I imagine they're saying that they don't have a scholar in mind, but they'd be looking while they're filling out this application. So I think they're looking for advice on that process. Do you have any thoughts there?
So sorry if I'm understanding correctly. They are looking to find a scholar and planning to name a scholar before the application deadline, and are asking about assistance with finding one. Is that the question, Sarah?
I think that's probably the question, is if they don't find one by the deadline, what should they do, perhaps?
Oh, if they don't find it, yes. In that case, then they should answer no. Are you, scroll back up to the top
Sure.
of the page if you could. Are you naming a scholar? The answer would then be no. And then you'd be providing what you, ideally what your candidate would look like. So what world region would they be from, what countries, what discipline, and then fill in this scholar profile page as if you do not have a named scholar.
Great. I'm going to do 2 more for this page and then move on. And Natalie, if you can respond to a few of the other ones in the chat, or we can come back to this at the end if people still have questions about the scholar profile. But one person mentions at the top up here, Susan, it says priority is given to proposals with named scholars. Can you provide some guidance as to what they mean by that?
I think, no, let me look into that and get back to on that.
Yes, for those of you who had that question, you're more than welcome to email us, and we'll get back to you on that, because we do want to clarify that, because that does differ from what we were saying earlier, so apologies. And then the last question before we move on is, does a scholar have to have a PhD?
So again, this will just depend on the discipline that they're coming from. Generally a terminal degree is required, but also depends on what they're doing on your campus. So we've also had a number of artists conducting workshops and so on. So it really depends on the specific proposal from your institution and what the requirements are on your campus for an individual to fulfill those activities.
Great. All right, I'm moving on to project statement for you.
Okay, great. So the project statement page, this is really the kind of crux of your proposal. This is the essay. This is the main essay that you'll be uploading into the application as an attachment. In this project statement section, the statement should address how the Scholar-in-Residence program would enhance your institution's short-term and long-term goals of internationalizing your campus. Describe your institution's current and previous experience with International World Area Studies programs, which could include courses, seminars, and workshops, including foreign languages taught at the institution, study abroad programs for students, visits by foreign faculty for lecturing or research, including any previous participation in the Fulbright Scholar-in-Residence program, foreign students, cultural events and programs, and other relevant internationalization efforts. Describing your short-term and long-term goals that will be enhanced by the participation of the proposed visiting scholar. Clearly state your institution's short and long-term goals, 1 to 5 years and 6 to 10 years respectively, in terms of developing, expanding, or strengthening international, global, or world area studies programs and activities, and any other relevant internationalization plans. Finally, for sustainability, describe the long-term impact you expect from the scholar's activities and how your institution will sustain this impact. Examples of long-term impacts may include creating a new course that will be added to the curriculum, developing new programs, adding an international dimension to existing coursework, collaborating with the scholar to expand the international expertise of the faculty, initiating an exchange program with the scholar's home institution, which could include student or faculty exchange and online teaching arrangements, developing student-faculty exchanges with the SIR's home institution, and developing an online course taught by your SIR after they return home. Okay, next is our institutional support page. On this page, we are asking you to upload letter from the responsible administrating official, which I mentioned earlier. This letter should confirm the institutional endorsement, the academic dates, and amount of financial support available. It should include the signature of the individual that's named on the institutional contact page of the application form as the responsible administrative official. There is a page limit of 2 pages for one institution and 4 pages for joint proposal. Next would be letters of support. And in this section, this is where you should include letters of support from the appropriate campus administrators, other departments, institutions, consortium members, community civic organizations, and schools or school districts referenced on the program information page. So this would be the organizations that support your outline for the community engagement piece, both within the academic community and off campus. The letters of support is limited to a 10-page maximum. Next, the section on in-kind support and cost sharing. Institutions are encouraged to think creatively about ways they can provide cost sharing and in-kind support to enhance the scholar's experience. Some examples of in-kind support include housing, transportation, on-campus meal plan, apartment furnishings, professional allowances for scholars to attend conferences, a salary supplement. In this section, we ask that you list the estimated value of support that the institution proposes to provide to the scholar. And then finally, the professional enrichment section. Although the primary grant activity is to support the institution's internationalization efforts, it's important to factor in time for the scholar to pursue his or her own scholarly interests. Briefly describe any activities that the institution would arrange for the scholar's participation in appropriate area academic events, regional or national disciplinary association meetings.
Great. And if we can quickly talk about some questions, and And I think I can answer one of them because we have some sleuths on this call that say it says a maximum of 20 pages for letters of support. But I think that's because this is a joint proposal. Is that right, Susan?
Yes, that would be for a joint proposal. Thank you.
Great. I got scared for a moment on this end. But yes, earlier this is currently set up as a joint proposal. But if you said it was a solo proposal, it will be 10 pages. Thank you to everyone who is really good at reading. So thank you all. The next question that I want to address is, can you describe the funding that Fulbright provides so we ensure we do not overlap funding responsibilities?
Sure. So the Scholar-in-Residence grant is paid directly to the individual scholar. And the award benefits include a monthly stipend rate, which is set by the cost of living in the location of your institution, along with a small professional allowance, materials allowance, and a settling in allowance. We also provide ASPE, that's accident and sickness protection, for exchange participants. This is a basic health insurance benefit, which is provided to all Department of State sponsored participants. We also provide international round-trip travel for the scholar and for one dependent that accompanies the scholar for at least 80% of their grant if they are in the country for 6 months or longer. What else? We also include a modest dependent allowance if they're bringing family members.
Great. Is financial support expected from the U.S. institution? I think they just want you to highlight maybe the difference between that cost share and the in-kind support just one more time.
Certainly. So financial contribution is not required for the program. It's not expected, but it's cost sharing in terms of like a financial contribution of a salary supplement, for example, that your institution provides in cash, it would not actually reduce the scholar's award. And in terms of in-kind support, it can be thought of in many different ways that we understand institutions cannot always provide a cash value, but certainly there are other aspects. For example, a faculty member's time in offering transportation, picking them up from the airport, taking them to the grocery store, and so on. That certainly is a form of in-kind support that should be noted and included here.
Great, thank you so much. You have a lovely compliment here about the list of possibilities that you went over about, I think it's post-award, designing online courses for institutions to use after the scholar is gone. So I think it's about the sustainability piece. However, it went so fast. Could you just quickly readdress some of those outcomes one more time?
Sure. And also, I'd like to point out that these are listed in the application guidelines. So don't worry if you don't catch it the first or second time. But I do encourage you to review the application guidelines on our website. And certainly when you're completing the application, this is intended to be a good resource for you. So just to go through again, some of those opportunities could include creating a new course that will be added to the curriculum, developing new programs, adding an international dimension to existing coursework, collaborating with the scholar to expand the international expertise of the faculty, initiating an exchange program with the Scholars Home Institution, which could include a student-faculty exchange and online teaching arrangements, developing student-faculty exchanges with the SIR's home institution, developing an online course taught by your SIR after they return home. So those are just some ideas that could, some long-term impact that some of our other SIRs have had.
Great, thanks so much. We have one more question as it pertains to this page, and then I figure we can close out with those last two tabs before I address some questions that kind of take us back in the application.
Mhm.
The first one is, does Fulbright cover their salary?
Well, so the monthly stipend is intended to serve as their salary to cover their living expenses. But it's not intended to cover any expenses they might have in their home country.
Great, thanks so much. I think with that, I can hit save and continue. And one thing before, Susan, you take over, because I ran into this yesterday in an advising session. For those of you who log in and want to hop around on the various tabs, all you have to do is hit save and continue to populate these tabs on the left. They won't appear at the start. You just have to keep hitting save and continue, but you are able to bounce around in the application. So that's my pro tip for you all. But with that, please take it away, Susan.
Okay. The signature page is just typing your name or just asking you to confirm that this is all parts of your application are true and accurate and complete. And then on the review page, this is your opportunity to review the components and ensure that you have completed all the required fields before hitting submit. So if you click on the review, this is sort of the final step before you hit submit. And this clearly, Sarah, you have not completed your application. So
I would not be selected.
So all these pieces, which are highlighted in red with the star of what's missing, will trigger you to go back to that section and complete it before you hit submit at the bottom.
And Susan, can you emphasize what this application proof is real quick?
So this is if you click on it, you will see a preview of what your application looks like in sort of a PDF reader. And so you can see what it looks like before you actually do hit submit.
And as Susan said, I did not do a good job filling it out. But for those of you who have completed it, you can also print to PDF so you can retain a copy. But I believe the system will also retain the copy for future years. Is that still correct, Susan?
Yes, it does.
Great. All right. Do you have anything else you want to address before I go back to the Q&A?
I think that pretty much sums up the application itself. Happy to answer any more questions that are coming in.
Awesome. So I do have a few questions still in the queue, but for those of you who are still on the line, please submit any and all questions. We're going to address as many as we can. It looks like we have about 12 minutes left. But the first question for you, Susan, is what tips do you have for what should be included in the letters of recommendation? And as a follow-up, they said, I could see writers needing more advice and structure on what should be included.
In the letter of, so the letters of support that are going in there? I mean, so, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I think it's about for the scholar's letter of recommendation, but maybe address both just in case.
Okay, so for the letters of support, I've actually heard on some of our recorded webinars from our alumni hosts, which I would encourage you to go back and listen to if you didn't have a chance to tune in live. But what they did was to actually just write the letter, draft it, and then ask their community partners to sign it So it would include the type of support they're looking for to enhance their proposal, and really talks about the ways in which the scholar will be engaging with their organization, and that they're enthusiastic to support it. So that's maybe a tip for the letters of support. And then for the recommendation letters, essentially, as I mentioned, one should be from the current direct supervisor of the scholar. But these are sort of, think about another, so I'm thinking in the U.S. Scholar application, obtaining a letter of recommendation that really speaks to the individual's qualities and qualifications to serve in the capacity of an SIR and to contribute to your community. Does that help?
That was great. Thanks, Susan. One question is about the letters of support and references, and I just want to emphasize everything does need to be in English. A great question. Thank you for asking. The next question I have is, are there samples of applications that interested U.S. institutions could look at?
We don't provide sample applications, but we used to have some extracts, I think, on our site, and I don't actually know where those have gone in our reiteration and updating of the website. But we do have a good section of tips. And Sarah, if you could maybe toggle back out to the application tips section and all the resources that we have available. Yeah, so this would be some guidance to pull together and craft a competitive application.
Great, thanks so much. And for this one applicant, they have been so patient, but I wanted to hold this for the end, so I apologize, can you emphasize what the timeline looks like? And I'll go to the timeline page. And they added a follow-up that they want to know, once an institution has proposed a name, how long would it take for the scholar to be informed?
So the application is due October 15th of 2021 for the 22 to 23 academic year. The applications will then be reviewed in the fall, and we anticipate notifying the selected institutions in, what did we say? Scroll down further.
I believe it was December.
December, yes.
It's in the guidelines. I don't think it's on this page. So.
Okay, thank you. I thought we had it here.
I can add it. And then
right.
let's say,
yes.
Oh, sorry, go on.
So in December of 2021, I will notify the applications of the review outcome. And then between January and April, the Department of State and the Fulbright Foreign Scholarship Board are reviewing those recommended proposals. The Fulbright Commissions and Public Affairs sections will review prospective scholars and recruit at that time if you've identified asking for recruitment assistance. And then April onwards, we'll work with you and also with our overseas offices to prepare the pre-departure material, and IIE provides the DS 2019 in support of the Scholars J1 visa. So that's not a process that the institution needs to be responsible for. We hold a virtual pre-departure orientation for our selected scholars that will be arriving in August and onwards. We have that pre-departure orientation in June, and actually the one for this upcoming year is starting tomorrow. So that's very exciting. And then the scholars arrive from August 2022 to January 2023.
Great, thanks so much. All right, some other questions that have come in is, are there a certain number of SIRs that are granted each year?
So at the moment, we're looking at about 30 grants per year, and that really is dependent on the Department of State's budget and the number that can be supported each year.
Wonderful. We did get a great question, and truthfully, I'm not too sure where this, I know where it's coming from, but Cheryl asked a great question of, if someone isn't going to be that final person responsible for hitting submit, how can they access the online application without creating a duplicate for their institution? Is there a way? And I believe this comes from the pro tip that I have for all of you, is you may have a group of people working on an application, but to maintain a streamlined efficiency, it's best just to have one person start an application, because you will get follow-ups from me throughout the cycle, and it tends to cause a lot of panic when you get a message saying you haven't submitted, but someone else on your team has. So Susan, do you have any ideas of a workaround for this?
I think I would just recommend sharing your login details so that you're all logging in to the same application. I think that's the only tip I can think of.
Great. Thanks so much. Andrew Hill, welcome, is on the line. I'm actually going to see if I can type this answer in, but Andrew has offered, if anyone is interested in seeing a previous successful application, he'd be willing to share it with you all, and has provided his email address. So Andrew, with your permission, I believe I'm going to type this in as the response to everyone, but that was very gracious of you to offer your help.
Thank you, Andrew. I will point out, though, keep in mind, we've recently made an overhaul to the application. So that section that used to be sort of a 10 to 15 page narrative is really now condensed into just one up to 5 page essay with the information that used to be within that narrative kind of teased out into these shorter answer essays, short essay answers.
Andrew also says that's a great point because his application is 4 years old. Thank you for all the advice, Andrew. We did have a question about the competitiveness of this process, if you could highlight that.
So we don't we don't have information about how many applications we receive, and of course that can vary from year to year. But you know, like I said, we are expecting about 30 awards per year.
Thank you. Could 3 or more partners apply for a Fulbright SIR? Have you seen that in the past?
Yes, actually we do. We had one grant that is a joint proposal between, let me think about this. The award isn't starting until January of next year, but it's between Ivy Tech, Purdue Northwest, and Indiana University. So those 3 combined together to host a scholar, and the scholar will be you know, engaging with all 3 institutions. But we actually don't have space within the application anymore to list more than just 2.
Great. And I think this will be the last question that we have. Do both letters of recommendation need to be from people outside of the host institution, or can one be from a faculty from within the host institution?
That's a good question. I don't think we have any restriction on it. But one, as I mentioned, should come from their current direct supervisor. So at least someone that's, most closely related to their experience and their work.
Great. Actually, if you have time for just one more question that has come through, could you give some insight into what the review process looks like? Who is reviewing this? What that kind of process looks like would be great, or the first round, I should say.
So the applications will be reviewed by a committee, and then based on the criteria that we've listed on our website, if you could jump to the review criteria tab. Right, essentially the committees will be looking at the potential impact, the quality of the proposal, diversity and geographic distribution, any previous Fulbright awards, and then we have some other considerations that are listed there.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone who's been on this call. These were all great questions. I know Susan, Natalie, and myself are really looking forward to seeing all of your applications. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to submit them to the SIR inbox. It's sir@iie.org. I'm the primary point person in there, but I do have my wonderful colleagues pitching in and lending support. I hope you all register for some upcoming office hours for more details. There's another question, when's the next webinar? No more webinars at this point, just these monthly office hours. So I again encourage you to join those. And Susan, any last, and this session will be recorded and posted, but Susan, any last minute thoughts?
Just good luck with the application, and don't hesitate to reach out to us with any questions that you have.
Great. Take care, everyone. Be safe.